Cohort, and then yeah, you yeah, you host both of them. So you host you get your server, and then you host I think you host both the front end and the API on both of them. I think you can. I've never deployed an API, to be honest. That was like an Express API anyway. I mean, I've used like Firebase, but that's easier and different. But yeah, you host both of them, and then usually your database. You can use AWS, which is a whole. You can. I think you can host it on your server, but we usually use AWS to host our databases. AWS is like a. Oh, it's not that hard, but it's got a bit of a learning curve. Yeah, usually you host both, and then you have like a URL. You know the URL for your API, right? And then you just use that in your front end. And then when you host your database, if you're using AWS, then you have a URL for that too, and that's what you use in your API to connect to the database. Yeah, I think you can just host everything on the same server. Again, if you're having any trouble cloning or running either of those repos, let me know. If you can't do that right now for any reason, let me know. I know Elena said you're on a loaner laptop, so that's fine. But if you're able to, then please clone and run those repos that I linked a minute ago. And then when you've done that, give that comment a thumbs up emoji reaction.
Connor?
Yep.
What's the ESLint library? ESLint?
ESLint is that on the front end or the API?
It's when I cloned the database demo one, just because I don't know if I have all the right code. It just said failed to load the ESLint library for the document.
Well, the ESLint is I don't know why I would get that error. That's the linter for JavaScript. ES is ECMAScript, which was another name for JavaScript, and the linter is just something you can run that looks at your code formatting, basically. Did you do npmi?
Yeah, you know what? I think because I hadn't done it yet, because I just tried to clone it, so I don't think it recognized it. It doesn't see it. So that's why it gave me that. So I'll try to run that.
Okay.
And that should fix it.
Where you lost at, Anthony? Okay. So here I can show you guys really quick. So here, I'll give a quick run through of what you guys should be doing in case you forgot. I guess it has been a while since we've done Git stuff, most of us. So I'm going to go to, so I have my work projects directory, right? Which was where I usually put all my different folders for my different projects for work. But I have this test one also, which I use to like demonstrate things sometimes. So I'm going to use my test directory. You should have a directory or a folder or something that you keep all your projects in, all your different stuff, right? For this course and like personal projects. So I'm going to use test. So I'm going to cd to test. And all I have in there is one repo. But we're just cloning those two repositories into your whatever directory you've been using for all your projects. So if I go, so these are the two repos, right? And to clone, you go to this code dropdown and you click this button to copy the URL, this little clipboard button. Copy that, and then back to your terminal, you do git clone, and then you paste the URL. So I'm in right now. The last thing in my terminal like prompt is the directory I'm in, right? So this is the directory that I'm cloning this repository into. So this is what I want. Git clone, and then the URL, and then just enter. And then if you do ls, you can see that repo is there now. And if I cd into bv tca database demo, if you press tab, it will autocomplete. If you cd that, and then that moves us into that folder, right? So that folder is what we want to open up. So I'm going to do code space dot to open that up. And now that I have this, this is the API project. I'm going to open up the terminal, and I'm going to just run npm I to install the node modules. And then you're also going to need an env file. So mine is, where is it? This one. Yours will look similar, but all the variables will be the same. Host and user might be the same. Database name will probably be the same. And the port, you will probably have a different password though, some of you. So make sure you know, this is all the stuff that you use to make your connection in Workbench. So Workbench is just interfacing with your MySQL server running on your computer. And so you use your credentials for your MySQL instance in Workbench. And our API is also just interfacing with our MySQL server. So you need the same credentials both to log in to the same thing, basically. So you need your env file. I'll post this so you have the format, but the variables, my very. There. So I'm going to take this and then I'm going to go to the repo that I just cloned. And in the root, not this, in the root of my folder, so next to all these other files, there's my node modules. So npmi worked. So I just click the refresh button on the file explorer thing here. And now I see my node modules are here. So I know that npmi worked, which is good. Then I do new file, right click, new file, call it .env, and then just paste that. Boom. And save it. Then to just run it, you should hopefully already have nodemon installed globally. So I just do nodemon, and then the file that I want to monitor. So nodemon app.js. Oh, and it crashed. What is this? Symbol not found. Might be because I'm in a different directory. Maybe. Hold on. Why? Something to do with bcrypt not working here. Oh, it's also in use, so I need to close this. So bcrypt was not working here for some reason. Why was that? Oh, it might be my node version. Well, if you get an error like that, let me know. I just commented out bcrypt. Well, we are going to need bcrypt. So at least I know what the problem is, or at least I know what's causing the problem. But this is what it will look like if it runs successfully, right after you do nodemon. So you have to do npmi first, then make the env file, then try using nodemon app.js for the API. How do you do it backwards, Brandon? Oh, yeah. Well, the JSON files, yeah, the JSON files will be there when you clone. Or they'll, yeah. They should, when you clone, then it should download the JSON files. But the env is in the git ignore, so you have to make that. So if you made that first, well, yeah. Yeah, you should clone first. Clone first, and then put the stuff in that folder. Yeah, so if nodemon worked, then it should look like this. So remember npmi, then add the env, file and then run nodemon, then you know that you can run this API. I want to figure out later why this is breaking it. I think it's because I'm just in a different directory than I'm usually using. So for some reason, node is messed up or something. And then for the front end is a little simpler because we don't have an env file, and it's easier to run because it's Angular. No, nothing should come up, I don't think. I think it's just like cannot get or something. Because it's not serving HTML or anything, right? It's just listening for requests. It's not going to load for me. That's fine. Yeah, you don't need your browser to do anything with it. For the API, at least. Okay. So that's for the API part. So I'm going to close this and go back. Oh, maybe I shouldn't. If I go back to to my test. Oh, it was this terminal. My test directory. Then I want to clone the front end now. Oh, this one. Yeah, I should not have named this. This is the front end. And we do the same thing to clone it. We just click code, then the clipboard button to copy the URL. And make sure we're in our directory. And we do git clone. And then the URL. And then if we do ls, we should see the project we just cloned. So we can cd into that. And then do code dot to open it up. Open up another terminal here. And I think I need to use version 10. Then for Angular, all you have to do is do npmi, right? And then do ngs, ngserve. And that should be it. You should see your node modules folder up here. Ooh, looks like it worked. And now do ngs serve it. And then the first time you do that, it'll take a minute to compile all this stuff. And it should say compiled successfully, and then you're golden. How do we know if the logout and get user cars buttons work? Well, we can try that. I'll get to that in a minute, I think. Yeah. So this one. So that's how you clone and run it. Run both repos. Right, so that's all we need to do right now. Once you've done that, go back up to that comment at 3:30 and give it a thumbs up so I know. Or I'll just make another one actually. You're probably getting an error, Peter, because maybe you don't have a job. a jot yet, so you might need to do the register thing first, or you need to make sure you're also running the API. I don't know, it could be a couple things. Okay. If you can't get it, then we'll come back to it after I go through the rest of it. You need a SQL table. Do you guys have the user table? Did I give that to you guys last week? You should have everything you need in your database. Do you all have in your car data database? Do you have a user table? Does anyone not have that? If you don't have that, please say so.
How do you pull up the table again on Workbench?
It's under your schema name. You do the drop down and then drop down tables. And then if you want to look at the content of the table, there's the icon when you hover it on the right.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, I added a column. That's right, in the user table. So let's see. Can I copy? Or not the user table, in the car table. So how can I get the... Oh, well, I'll just do this. So what was it? Can I just export this? All right. Oh, I think I had the code somewhere. I think it's update alter to, oh, this. Yeah. So I also added another table in our car, add another column in our car table that we're going to need for this example. And this is the code for that. So that's why you're getting that error repeater. So just go select car data and then go to the query tab and then run that code for everyone. You don't have to open the car table. You just have to run this. Well, you should open it to make sure that the column added right, I guess. So. Okay. Yeah, you have to click the little lightning bolt on the left. The tooltips.
Connor,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead. I'll wait.
I was just gonna say the tooltips in Workbench don't actually stay there until you. Oh, yeah, they do. But anyway, doesn't matter. What did you need?
Okay, so the database demo file.
Mm-hmm.
So it was waiting for I guess localhost 3000. So then I started the server, pulled up my SQL bench, but then I got an error that says econ refused, connect port 3306 fatal. So I retried it and did the same thing, gave me a ton of errors.
That error is in your in VS Code, right?
In the yeah.
You have your env file.
Yeah, I put the env file in there, port 3000, all that stuff.
The port should probably be 3306.
So change it to 3306.
Yeah, that's probably. It's the port. It's not the port that your API is serving. Oh wait. Oh, this port. This one's 3000. Because there's DB port and then.
Yeah, so that one, the DB port is 3306
and
the port 3000. It's the same as yours.
Okay, that's fine.
So leave it like that, right?
Yeah.
But okay.
And your password is the one that you used on Workbench?
Yep, that all worked fine.
Maybe. Maybe you're not running your MySQL server.
It's on. I'll keep trying. I don't know. I'll try running it again.
I've got a question.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember, but I wasn't able to make the car schema on the database because my computer wasn't working that one day. And so I copied it into the env file, but I don't have it on my Workbench. And so I was just wondering if you could provide the code so I could put it in.
Yeah, so let me see if I can export this whole thing. Create statement. Oh, well, doesn't help. Can I export? Data export. Everything. Oh, not these, not everything, just this, and then self-contained file. I think this is all I need. It's fine. Okay, export completed. It went to. Okay. Oops, here, today. Yeah. let's take that SQL file, and then on Workbench, you can go to server and then data import, and then import from self-contained file, and then you find wherever you save that SQL file, and then you open that. Server data import, and then import from self-contained file. And then you click the 3 dots in the end, and then you find the file, and then you open it. Where's what? I have two, I have like a radio button. There's 2 buttons. The one's import from dump project folder, and one's import from self-contained file. I just have a button. I don't know if it's different for yours. It's in like the center top section. It's like this import options section. And then the second one. Oh, let me see. Oh, you're sure yours good. So you're in an unconnected tab. Click where it says local instance MySQL 80. Yeah. And then go, yeah, database and then server, server and then data import. And then that second, yeah. And then the 3 dots on the right. And then find wherever you downloaded the SQL file. Yeah, and then I think that's all you need to do. Oh, and default, oh, you don't need default target schema. Then you just do start import, I think. Okay. Duplicate column name, user ID. So then you already have user ID, I think. Peter. I don't know why you're getting that error before then. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, get rid of the duplicate ones, I think. What are you doing? All right. Okay, I think we're all pretty much there in this part.
Hey Connor, how do you delete schema? There's no delete button on my side.
Oh, you drop schema.
I'll drop schema.
Drop
Okay,
in
cool.
SQL is like the same as delete.
Okay, cool.
For the data import? No, you don't need to put it. These other files are just for setting up, like just like a reference for setting up the database initially. So you don't need to do anything with it after you import. After you import it, it should just run it and then make the schema for you and make your database. Then after that, you don't need it. Lay down. Yeah. What schema weren't you using, Peter? Oh, yeah, make sure you double click the one that you want to add it to. I think that's, yeah. Then when you run your query, that'll run it on that schema specifically. Oh, after you press the three dots. So yeah, you import from self-contained, three dots. That's where you're importing from. So you find the file, that car data schema export that I put in Discord. After you download that, then you do this. And then when you click the three dots, you're looking for that file, and that's what you're opening. They should be separate folders. Your both repos should be separate folders in the same directory.
Connor, after review, are you going to be available to help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I can't even get it connected. So.
Yeah, I can help you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we can. Let's take a break. Let's take a 15-minute break. And when we come back, we'll see if we can get everyone caught up on setup stuff. Then I'll go through the lecture. I don't think it shouldn't take the rest of the class. And then we can review things and fix any other issues that we're having. So let's take a 15-minute break. Come back at 4:32, sometime around there. And then we'll keep going. All right, sorry about that. I had an early lunch and then I realized I needed to eat something. So, okay. Laura, you got my seal to connect. Oh, good. Nice. Were you still lost? That is okay. We will become unlost. Okay. Do you have, okay, so looks like most of us have the repos cloned and we're able to run them. Someone else? Oh, Anthony, did you need help running them? Or was it something else? Okay. Yeah, I'll probably have another one this week, 6 to 7 on Wednesday. So. Oh, and then I can just help you later if we have time tonight. So, all right. It just turns an empty array. You might not have content in your database. We'll see. I'm just gonna start going through, reviewing last week a little bit, and then continuing on through till the end of authentication and route protection stuff. So I'll start from, let's see. Okay. Start by running the things. All right, so last week I think I went through the jot, right? Oh, I started talking about the jot middleware, that's right, and then it ended, and then we stopped because my internet cut out. So our first two endpoints here, register and auth. Auth is just login. This should probably be named login. But /auth authenticates the user. So that's where you log in, right? They both, let's see, register takes email, first name, last name, and a password. So you're creating an account for something. And it takes the password, hashes it, and then it inserts all those values, including the hash password, into your user table and creates a new user. And then here, down here on line 91, we use dropped.sign to encode an object. So this object, oh, wait a second. All right, sorry, dogs. Okay. So we take the ID from the value that we're inserting, and that's going to be our user ID, right? So when we do insert into the table, it returns some stuff. It returns an object with information about the query that we ran. And one of those properties on that object is the insert ID. And that's just going to be the ID if we look on our user table. Say we create, I made a bunch here the other day. Say we make a new user here. It's going to add a new row, and it's going to have a new ID of 28, because the last one here for me is 27. So to make a new row, the ID is going to be 28. And that, since we're inserting there, that's the insert ID. It would be 28. So that's also the ID of the user that we just created. And we take that, and we take the request body, which has, you know, first name, last name, email. Actually, we should not add password here, but that's okay. But it takes the request body, which has password, first name, last name, and email, puts that in an object with the user ID. So this is going to be our user ID, user.insert ID. And then it encodes that with our jot key and returns it to the front end. So that's when we register. Authentication basically does the same thing, but well, returns the same thing. But what it does is take the email from the body, see if there's an email in the table that matches that one. And if there isn't, then user is going to be undefined. And then it's going to return email / password not found. I'm going to change this to email not found, not just email password. So that way we know why it's not going through, right? So if you can't find an email in that table that matches the one that the person is passing in, then it returns email not found. But if it does, then user will be equal to all the stuff from that row, just that user information from the database, because we're doing select all from user where email equals email. And then it'll keep going, and then it will take user.password, turn it into a string, because it's stored as a object, right? And we have to stringify it in order to compare it with bcrypt. So we get user password, which is the encrypted password. And then we compare that to the plain text password that the user is trying to log in with. So if I say this Connor62, right? And then the password just shows blob, but it's because it's an encoded object. Say it's just password. If I try to log in with Connor62 at Gmail with this email, it's going to find that, get all the information, stringify the password, right? So this password here. And then it's going to compare the password I'm trying to log in with, which will be plain text, to this password from the database. And then if they're the same ones, bcrypt will return true. And then if it's true, then we create a payload, and then we encode that with our jot key, and then we return it just like the register endpoint. Then if they're not the same, then compare will be false, and then it will just return email password not found. And this should just be password not found, actually. Here we should also add user ID. So I added it up on /register. We should also add it when we log in here, and you'll find out why in a little bit. Okay. So those are our two endpoints that don't require authentication because they are the authentication, right? You either register or you log in. You don't need to be logged into either of those, obviously. But if you want to use some of these endpoints down here, we want to make sure that the user is actually logged in and authenticated, because we don't want people trying to hit endpoints when they're not logged in, even logged in, right? So we want to make sure that they have a valid jot. So if they have a jot, then they are logged in. I'll show that in the front end in a second. So we want to make sure that the user has a valid jot, which would mean that they're logged in before they hit these endpoints. And the reason that it stops them if they don't have one is because of this middleware here on line 149 for me. It should only be off by 1 or 2 unless you added this. But it's this verified jot middleware where it checks, gets request, checks the headers, finds the authorization header. If it doesn't have that, then it throws an error because you need an authorization header to hit these endpoints down here, right? So it'll throw an error and then it will stop. And it won't let you use any of these endpoints without a valid authorization header. So it first checks to see if you have one. Then if you do have one, then it gets bearer and token out of the header. So in Insomnia, remember we had, I don't know if you guys had this, but I can't zoom in anymore. But there's an authorization header, and it's just one long string, but the string is made up of the word bearer, space, and then the jot. So if you were to split that on white space, then it would split those two words into elements in an array, just like here. So here I have bearer, and that's a space, and then jot. And then if I do const scheme, so this is just array destructuring. So header.split turns this into an array, right? So console log header.split. Then we see it's an array, right? Just bearer and then the jot. Just 2 elements in this array, these 2 words. And then we destructure the first element and the second element out of that, basically declaring these 2 as variables. So scheme is the string bearer, token is the token. Okay, so it checks to see if the scheme is actually bearer. So bearer is just a certain format for an authorization header. That's all we need to know for now. Just check to make sure that it has the right format, right scheme. If it doesn't, then it just throws an error. Then we have this try catch block. And here we do const payload equals jot.verify. Then we take the token and then we pass in our jot key. And then it verifies that this token was created with this jot key. So this token will always be made by either /auth or /register, and those create the token that we send to the front end, and the front end sends it back in a header. So this basically just checks to make sure that this token was created with the same jot keys, the same API. So we want to take jots that were made by some other API, right? Want to make sure that they were created by our API. And then if they're not, then this would throw an error, and then it would send an error message based off of all of this logic below me. But if it is valid, then we just set request.user to the payload. So we create request.user here, and this is going to be the object that we're decoding out of this job. Okay, so I'm going to go to the front end now, and we'll see how this looks on the front end. So I'm already serving it. And if I go to localhost, I have this nice form, which is literally just some inputs and buttons stacked together. But if we go to the code for the front end, let's see, app, and then I just have an app component. We just have these inputs and the button for registering, right? So the inputs are bound to these properties. Register just runs this register button function. So we have our properties here. They get changed when we type in those input boxes. And then when we run the register function, click the button, then it calls our service. So I have this REST service that has this register function, and we just pass it this object, first name, our register information, basically just first name, last name, email, password. Passes it so these values, right? And then this calls our base route, which we should have in our environments file, environment.ts, which is in the environments folder. It's just our localhost URL for our API. And then we import that as a variable, and we use it in our API requests here. So we're using HTTP client. And so we do this.http.post or get or put or delete. So we just do this.http and then whatever HTTP method it is. So post, put, get, or delete. So if we want to register, we just do this.http.post. We do our base URL /register, and then we pass it in the body, which is the stuff that's coming from our form. And then we turn it from an observable to a promise because we're using an observable for an API call doesn't make sense. So we just do toPromise to turn it into a promise, and then we can use .then. And what we're doing here is setting the jot in local storage. So if we look here, if I just fill out some stuff and make the request, then we get a response back, and that's what this is. And I'm just console logging it and then setting it in local storage. So I'm going to run this, and we see we get our jot back as a string. That's what's getting returned. And then we're setting that in local storage. So local storage, I think I mentioned before, at least once, might have been a while ago. But we use local storage, which is just vanilla JavaScript. So this isn't an Angular service or anything. You can just use this anywhere in JavaScript that's running on the browser. It's just a way to store data in your browser so that it's still there when you refresh or close the browser and reopen it or whatever. And it just has set item or get item and delete, or yeah, set, get, remove. Here's the documentation for it for you guys. It just has these 4 methods, I think: set, get, remove, oh, and then clear clears the whole thing. Don't usually use that. But you can set values here. So if we go to our browser in Firefox, you go to storage, and then you go to local storage, and then you click the website that you're on. On Chrome, you go to the application tab, and then under storage, you go to local storage, and then you go to your URL that you're on. So it looks kind of the same. If you go here, yeah, localhost 4200. This was before, don't worry about that. Oh, I can just delete this. So this is where you find local storage on Chrome. You just go to the application tab in DevTools, you go to storage, and then you click the website. In Chrome, it's just under storage and then local storage. And then we see here, so let's look back at our code really quick. We're doing local storage.set item. This .jot key is just a string, just a user jot. And then we're giving it the response that we're getting from our register endpoint, which is just the jot. And for some reason, the reason I have this string casting here is because TypeScript kept wanting to think that this was returning an object, not just a string like this. I don't know why, but I wonder if I can I do this? No. Can I do this? I can do that, and I don't need, okay, that makes more sense. All right, I'm gonna do that instead. So TypeScript thought this was returning an object before by default for some reason. And since I'm not returning an object from the API, I'm just returning a string. I was trying to use it like a string in local storage.set item, and it was complaining. But local storage only takes things as strings. So every key and value is a string. So this .jot key is the key, user_jot, and the response is a string. So it's kind of like an object, right? Like a JSON object in normal JavaScript. We have the key and the value. So just like in objects, we have a key and then the value. Local storage is the same. You just have a key for the piece of data that you want to enter. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. You have the key, which is just the name for it, basically, and then the value, which is the value. So that's what we enter here when we set the item. Jot key, and then the response. And then that's what creates this key value pair in local storage. Okay. Now that we've registered and we have our jot in local storage, we can use it later. So before, when I was talking about this jot, verified jot middleware, it checks our authorization header. see if there's one even there, and then makes sure that it's valid, and then make sure that the jot itself is valid. And then it sets quest.user equal to payload. So if we don't have a valid jot in a header, and then it won't get past this middleware if we try to hit one of these endpoints, which is what we want, right? We want to make sure that people are logged in when we try to hit these endpoints. So we add that in our header later on the front end. So if we want to get car, for example, right, just /ID, that would be this endpoint, just a get to /some ID. Then we do this.http.get. We give it the URL with our ID at the end of the car that we want to get. And then second argument is an object with different like configurations you can have for your request. And we just give it the headers property, which is also an object of headers. So this is basically just how we add headers to our requests. So we have authorization, and then this is our jot here, bearer space jot. And jot is just getting it from local storage. You just get an item from local storage using the key for that item. And then we add that to our header, and then we make the request. So then when we go here, right, back to our API, we make the request. We have a valid header now, checks all this. Then it sets request.user, and then it keeps going, and then it will actually hit our endpoint here, and then it will actually do the thing. So let's see what happens if we comment it out, if we don't add the header, and then if we try to do that. So I have a button, get car by ID, yeah. And all that does is, it's just get car here. So it's just a number picker for the ID, and then a button that calls this function, which calls this.rest.getCar, passes in the this.car ID, right, which gets set by the number picker. Get car, and then it takes the ID, and then it makes the request. So if we comment out this header, then when we try to make that request, it should throw an error in our API. So let's see what car we want to get from our car table. Fiesta and Civic. Say I want to get the Civic, that's ID 7. So let's do that. Get car by ID. Oh, it gets it. Oh, wait, why is that working? Hold on. Make sure this is calling the right thing here. So get car. Get car, right? Get car by ID. Calls this.rest.getCar. And we're not giving it a header. So it should not work. Let me see. It's interesting when something works when you think it shouldn't work. So you don't have the header, right? Saved it. And then try to refresh. REST service TypeScript line 53. Yeah. Why is that not? That's console logging the token. Hold on. Mm-hmm. Let me try this. I'm going to console log just the headers. Make sure this is really noticeable. Terminal. And I'm going to try it again. Oh. Oh no. Wait a minute. This might be. Oh no. That's it. NodeMon. App.js. So it's logging this. Why is it still continuing? I'm returning something. Did I have some logic left over from something? So it's logging request here, right? Request.headers, MEF host, the user agent, accept language, accept encoding, and then the authorization header. Why is that there? When I'm not sending it, right? This is the function that I'm running, should be. Hold on, when I save this, it doesn't reload. It's interesting. I'm gonna restart my Angular server. Oh, I'm in, wait, I don't know why that would matter. Hold on, just make sure. Make sure I'm in the right directory, as in my test directory. I don't know why that would matter though. Unless, oh, I was running, oh, I don't know. All right. What is it? PVTCA Angular API connection. NGS. Hopefully that was the problem. I don't know why that would be the problem though when I'm. Oh, my terminal was on the different. My terminal was on a different repository than I'm actually looking at here. So I was in test in my terminal, but this repo that I'm looking at here is the one that was in work projects. And now it's restarting. So now when I do car by ID, there. Then we get an error in our API. We should. Or well, at least it doesn't continue. Let me get rid of this. Restart it. I'm going to call it again. Yeah, there we go. Now we get an error, invalid authorization, because we don't have our header. All right. There we go. And if we just uncomment it, and then it should work. I'm going to click the button again. And we got data back. So we need the header in order to make requests to these endpoints after this drop middleware function. Okay. Now, the reason that we store or we do this line up here when we register, we should be doing this when we log in too. I need to add that. But when we register, we see this. Where was it? Where did I have it? Oh, no, that's in the middleware. Sorry, not in register. In the verified jot middleware function, when we make requests here and we have a valid jot, it does this request.user equals payload, right? So payload, if we look here, it's our object with information about our user. So we have our user ID, first name, last name, email, password. And then this is like the expiration date for the jot, basically. It's not super important right now. But we have this, our user ID, right? So if we want to get something based off of the current user that's logged in, we would use that later on. So that is assigned to request.user, right? That's the payload. So then later on, if we want to get a list of cars for a certain user, we can just do request.user.user ID. So we don't have to figure out some other weird way of finding out who's making the request, right? We can just use request.user, which has the user ID. So all we pass for this GET request is just the URL. We don't pass anything else in the URL or a body or anything. And we can fetch cars for the certain user. So that's why I had you guys add that user ID column in your car table. So if we look in the car table, we have our list of cars, and then we have user ID. So this is the ID of the user that is associated with these cars. Okay, so if I do, let's see, we want to get a list of cars for the current user, which comes from the cars table, right? So we want to get a list of cars associated with the user with the ID 27 here. All we have to do is do get user cars. That's what runs when I click this button, right? And then it will make the request to /user cars, give it the header with a jot. Then it will go through the verify jot function, set request.user to that decoded jot, which is this our object with our user information. Then it will get to /user cars, use request.user.user ID, and then select all from car where user ID equals this user ID here. And then it just returns that. And the reason it's returning an empty array, I think Peter, oh yeah, you asked about that earlier. The reason it's returning an empty array is because we're not logged in as user 27. Right? We're logged in as whatever the last one I inserted into the user table, I think, which was like 28 or something. So the person I'm technically logged in as is different than this one. So it's not going to find any results from here associated with my user ID. I'd have to change my user ID to 27 or something. But this is a really common thing that people ask when they start working with us. Sometimes they don't know how, like there's an endpoint, right, that gets some data for the current logged in user, but we don't pass it anywhere in the front end, right? Or it doesn't look like we do. But we do give it the jot. And then when we log in or register, right, that's where we're getting the drop from, right? When we log in or register, we're setting it here. And then we can get it later, put it in the header, and then the API decodes the drop, and that has the information that we need to do things based off the current user. All right, so that's a lot more stuff, but that's about the last stuff that we need to cover for the course. The last new stuff. Pretty sure. Does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot. I was recording that whole thing, so I will put recording up tonight. And then we'll have the rest of tonight to work on issues or reviewing stuff. And then also, I mean, pretty much the next 2 or 3 weeks. I will probably not finish writing up the final assignment tonight, but I can tell you guys, you should just start thinking of what you want to do, and I'll probably write it up and give it to you guys tomorrow, or yeah, tomorrow or Wednesday. So you can start working on it. You could start working on it now, because I mean, it's basically the front end is just going to be the same basic thing that we did for the final Angular projects. But you can reuse that if you want.